Black Op Radio presents 50 Reasons for 50 Years. Postscript, 1968. Now your host, Len Osanek.
Martin King felt an obligation to return to Memphis at the beginning of April 1968. Speaking to Black Op Radio, author Jim DiEugenio describes.
King had to return to Memphis because he had been there the last week of March, and a demonstration turned out pretty bad. There was actually some looting and violence in that demonstration he led for the sanitation workers, so he had to come back.
The FBI issued an editorial on King that they circulated to newspapers, saying that because of the violence resulted in King returning to Memphis, that King should then register not at a white-owned hotel, but at the nice black-owned motel, the Lorraine Motel in town.
He was scheduled to be at this white middle-class hotel. Hoover heard about this. He started putting out these stories. This makes King change from that hotel to the Lorraine, which, of course, is right across the street from this boarding house. It's even worse than that. His room gets changed. To this day, nobody knows who changed his room. The original room was on the first floor, facing into a courtyard. The second room is on the second floor, with the outdoor balcony onto the street. And you could have not shot King like he was killed if he would have had the original room.
He was never going to be allowed to leave Memphis, Tennessee. And that was why they developed this program of making sure that he didn't leave Memphis.
Military intelligence moved into Memphis, and according to some sources, they actually went ahead and set up a desk in the police department. According to other sources, they actually set up a surveillance point across the street from the Lorraine Hotel.
He had a crew of 4 very committed police officers who, when King came to Memphis, make sure that he was as safe as possible. I talked personally to one of those police officers. He told me he had been responsible for that security team, and before King came on that particular occasion, unlike all the previous occasions, he was told by the head of the department that they wouldn't be needing his help on that occasion.
On each previous visit to Memphis, King had his own personal security detail. Security expert Jerry Williams headed this team up. On April the 3rd, Williams was told not to form that unit. Williams testified that he would never have let King stay at the Lorraine. He felt it was too dangerous a venue.
It was just, an open view. Anybody could kill King from the opposite side of the street because he had to walk out on the balcony in order to get downstairs. There was no elevator, there's no walkway apart from a public view by anybody.
There's some interesting things pertaining to this whole situation relative to the fire station. There was one African-American fireman, and he was called to go home in an emergency. One of his children had been critically injured in an accident. He rushed home to discover that the child was safe in school. Nothing had happened. He called back, was told to stay home.
It took years for details of what went on at the fire station across from the Lorraine Motel to be revealed. It was a hub of activity, including the Memphis police and military intelligence.
Nobody went out and positioned themselves where Dr. King was when he got shot and look around. At that time of day, even though it's slightly grayish, the sun is directly behind the tower on the fire station, and the fire station is a perfectly black silhouette. You can't see anything that is against it or inside it or whatever, and snipers don't hang out of the window with the barrel showing. And then they're 10 feet inside. Somebody who is a spotter says target coming out. You're sighted in, ready to go.
The entire assassination was photographed from the roof of the firehouse across the street from the Lorraine Motel by 2 Army intelligence operatives. Those photographs have never been uncovered, but it's clear that they were taken from all of the testimony and depositions gathered.
Dr. King was supposed to be going out of the other side of the motel Someone had made a call just shortly upon him leaving the room. He was asked to come back to the other side because fans were out there. He walked out the other side and he was shot. And then surprisingly, an off-duty officer, African-American, who had just been hired by the department, in plain clothes, rushed to King's side. I suspect to see if he was in fact sufficiently wounded.
That demonstration I talked about, which I think was March 28th, the reason it was disrupted and the reason that it turned to looting was because the group that was obstructing the peaceful demonstration was called the Invaders. The Invaders were like an imitation Black Panther group. One of the leaders of the Invaders was a guy named Merrill McCullough.
Secretly, he was a police informant, was also connected to the FBI.
You can actually see him on the famous picture of King dying on the balcony, pointing to the alleged assassination site across the street.
Before the murder, Merrill McCullough was introduced to Jowers as a policeman. And right before the assassination, McCullough had been in Jim's grill at a meeting with 4 other people, one of whom was a member of the police force. Now, when Merrill McCullough testified before the House Select Committee on Assassinations, they covered up what his job was at the time of the interview, which was in 1978. He's working for the Central Intelligence Agency.
There's a debate as to where the fatal shot came from. The state says it came from the Bessie's boarding house right across the street from the 2nd floor. But there was a New York Times reporter, he was in Memphis for King's appearance there, and he said, no, it came from the bushes down below.
Which provided really good cover for a sniper. At least 4 witnesses saw a man or smoke coming from those bushes right after the shooting.
One of the key witnesses was the man who was in charge of the sanitation department. He received a call about 7 a.m. on April 5th, day right after the assassination, from the Memphis Police Department inspector requesting assistance. They were directed by the police to clean up the area behind Jim's grill that Lloyd Jowers owned. They were told to cut down all the brush, trees, and the bushes, which the day before had been the cover for a person who fired a rifle at Martin Luther King and killed him. The crime scene was cleaned up. You don't clean up the crime scene. Then the claim is made by the police department and the FBI that James Earl Ray shot King from a bathtub up in a flop house, and because the crime scene has been sanitized, there's no cover down there below for the shooter to have done what the shooter did in fact do.
So, not only was Dr. King's hotel changed, but his room was changed by persons unknown, making him uniquely vulnerable. The regular Memphis police security detail was told to stand down. Surveillance teams following King were put in place across the street from his hotel. An undercover policeman was active in and around the Lorraine Motel that day. The bushes that may have concealed the gunman were removed early the next morning on instructions from the Memphis police. Yet, despite all this activity, the official story claims a lone nut gunman with no motive coincidentally showed up on the scene and got off a lucky shot.
Stay tuned for the next installment, Postscript 1968.